here, and I thank you very much for your time and for your participation in this webinar. And good afternoon also to our Executive Secretary, Ms. Jyoti Mathur-Philip. The purpose of this webinar is to share information on the organizational work for INC-5 and to provide a space for interested observers to share reflections. This session is exclusively dedicated to interventions from observers. Before giving my opening remarks, I will now like to give the floor to the Executive Secretary to deliver opening remarks. Please, Executive Secretary, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone else. I would just like to wish you a very warm welcome to the second session of this informal webinar with observers that we are hosting together with Ambassador Baez, the chair of the INC, ahead of the fifth session of the committee in Busan next week. This webinar aims to build on the positive experiences we have had so far convening these observer webinars in the lead up to the third and fourth sessions of the INC. We think this is a useful format and also an opportunity for you to highlight your key messages to the chair, members, and fellow observers participating today. I wish to thank all of those who have expressed their interest in intervening today. We had a very engaging first session earlier today, and I'm sure we will have the same now. I hope you will find these webinars useful to enrich our discussions at INC-5. We are delighted with the strong interest and engagement of observer organizations in INC-5. Of the 3,500 registrations approved, over 2,000 were from observers representing 574 non-governmental organizations, 19 UN entities, and 13 intergovernmental organizations. I am also pleased to inform you that the chair, the UNEP executive director, and myself will once again be hosting an in-person conversation with observers ahead of the session on 24th November, as has been our practice since the second INC session. Now, let me hand over to, I think, Juan Pablo from the Secretariat for some updates and housekeeping remarks for this meeting. Thank you, Chair, and over to you, Juan.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. And thank you to everyone for joining our second session of the Observer webinar. It's lovely to see you all. I would like to highlight a few practical points for this event. Both sessions of this webinar will be held in English only, and please note that this session is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the INC-5 webpage. The session is also being live streamed on YouTube, so you can find the link under the events section of the INC-5 website. Given the large number of interventions, we will have to manage our time strictly. So each presenter will have a maximum of 3 minutes for their intervention. A timer will be displayed on the screen to help you manage your delivery. To allow the greatest possible number of presentations, we will not be opening for a question and answer session today. Please use the chat box if you experience technical difficulties. A member of our Secretariat team will then respond to you directly to help you. As always, we also wish to remind all participants of the code of conduct applicable to United Nations system events, which is available in our webpage. The UN system is committed to enabling events at which everyone can participate in an inclusive, respectful, and safe environment. Now, each of you to uphold this commitment. We are now just a week from the start of INC-5, and we wish to share with you some additional information to help you plan your participation at the session. We invite all observers to read the information note to participants, which is constantly updated and available on the INC-5 page. Important information on badge collection, access to the venue, and other practical information is available in this document. As mentioned by the Executive Secretary, the in-person conversation with observers will take place in room 205, contact group 2 room, on the 24th of November from 3 to 4 p.m. The in-session document platform will be made available for INC-5. This is a password-protected platform for accredited observer organizations to self-upload their in-session statements. A notification has been sent to all of the registered observers with further information on the platform, which will only be available in session. This concludes the Secretariat's remarks, so let me hand over the floor back to the Chair for the next agenda item. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jyoti, and thank you very much, Juan Pablo, for those opening remarks and that information on this webinar. Dear and distinguished observers and dear friends, the organization of work for INC-5 in Busan is critical to ensuring a constructive, transparent, and inclusive dialogue as we move into the concluding stages of negotiating a legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. As chair, I'm dedicated to supporting a process that enables each delegation to contribute meaningfully and ensures our work is effective and efficient. As you know, on October 17, I distributed the scenario note with my proposal on organization of work. Also, on the 22nd of October was distributed the third chair's non-paper to facilitate the substantive debate and negotiations on the legally binding instrument on plastic pollution. The strategies outlined in the scenario note are intended to first optimize the 7 available days of negotiations at INC-5. You have heard me before, we have only 63 hours of work during our fifth and final session in Busan. And second, to ensure that we can conclude our work within the established time frame. To support these objectives, the scenario note has been carefully structured to provide a clear pathway for adopting a legally binding instrument at INC-5, thereby fulfilling the mandate we have been entrusted with, and also offer ample space for deliberation, debate, and negotiation. To manage our workload effectively, the scenario note proposes establishing 4 contact groups and 1 legal drafting group. This one was already established during our 4th session in Ottawa, Ottawa, Canada. This structure is intended to allocate resources strategically, allowing them to prioritize the issues that most require their expertise. The INC-5 meeting calendar will be sequenced to prevent overlap. The INC session will begin with contact groups where we anticipate a higher level of convergence. My commitment as chair remains steadfast. I will facilitate constructive conversations, thoughtful debates that will lead us to adopt a final text for the instrument. Throughout our journey, we have engaged in open and productive dialogue, fostering a spirit of multilateralism essential for our collective success. As we move toward INC-5, I'm committed to upholding the INC's principle of efficiency, inclusivity, and transparency. Our collective efforts here will lay the groundwork for a legally binding instrument in Busan that will have a meaningful and lasting impact on our shared mission to combat and end plastic pollution. The provisions of the scenario note are designed to structure the discussions and negotiations process. Its ultimate goal is to help us deliver a robust legal instrument on plastic pollution. I'm confident that we will achieve our goals together, paving the way for a future in which environmental stewardship and collaborative global actions are at the forefront of our efforts. Once again, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much for your time. And now I would like to open the floor. I have here my list, and the first organization in my list is Galapagos Conservation Trust. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Chair, for the introduction and for allowing us this space. I am Luciano Ruiz Crespo from the Galapagos Conservation Trust, which is a British NGO that has been supporting the Galapagos Islands conservation and sustainable development for 30 years. I am connecting from Galapagos. I represent a working group that was created at INC-4 after signing the Rapa Nui Declaration in the start of April. And this working group creation was led by the Rapa Nui municipality and by the Directorate of the Galapagos National Park. We have been working since INC4 on a policy brief that will be launched tomorrow, but I would like to share in this space the main points that we have been working on. Basically, the working group is formed by some island voices from the Pacific, like Galapagos, Rapa Nui, Juan Fernandez, Tuvalu. We have people from New Zealand, from Hawaii, and also from organizations supporting the Pacific Islands. The policy brief aims to highlight the adverse and disproportionate impacts the Pacific Island territories face from plastic pollution, building on the Rapa Nui Pacific Leaders Summit. And we hope to provide some guidance and practical recommendations for the delegates of the Global Plastics Treaty to incorporate measures that bolster the international response to plastic pollution in island territories beyond small island states, but also for small island states, but for all the island communities, and to protect the unique biodiversity of the Pacific region. So we hope to contribute to achieve a robust outcome from INC-5, as the chair was mentioning, with necessary legal, institutional, and economic tools to address this growing global problem. We, in the Pacific Islands, as you know, are a stunningly diverse region, home to vibrant cultures and communities that coexist with a wide array of species. 75% of these species are found nowhere else. This region features some of the world's most unique ecosystems. Basically, plastic pollution does not respect marine protected areas from these island ecosystems, basically undermining local efforts, affecting local communities, and threatening marine biodiversity. We are endorsing many of the voices from other observers. We think that the non-paper 3 provides a good basis for the forthcoming treaty. We also hope that the INC-5 conversations expand some provisions. We think that addressing the full life cycle of plastic products is important, reducing the production of polymers, having a human rights-based approach, ensuring that the indigenous rights are respected. We think that mandatory periodic reporting is important, transparency and accountability. Moreover, we hope for the non-paper to include all island territories beyond small island states, because there are many island territories that are not nations but belong to countries, for example, and they need to be taken into consideration as well in the text of the treaty. We hope for the treaty to request replacement and elimination of non-essential plastics and single-use plastics. So non-essential criteria should be developed in the text of the Global Plastics Treaty.
Thank you very much, Madam. Yes, we have run over time.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you.
No, but thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt your intervention. I thank you very much to the Galapagos Conservation Trust. And now I'd like to give the floor to the Asociado Civil Proyecto Hospitais Sodoven. I'm sorry, the pronunciation maybe is not correct, but please, Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I first would like to thank the chair of the International Negotiation Committee and other representatives of the UNEP Secretariat, the opportunity for the observer organizations expressing their voice. I am Alessandra Azevedo, and I speak on behalf of the Health Hostels Project, Healthcare Without Harm, and the Life Without Plastic Coalition formed by civil society organizations in Brazil. Plastic poses an ongoing crisis for human and planetary health, which will inevitably worsen unless global action is taken. Taking this into account, we urge delegates and everyone who's involved in this discussion to commit to a just and equitable treat that respects human rights, limits the production of plastics, eliminates unnecessary plastic products, including single-use plastics, prioritize detoxification, and ensures transparency of plastic products and materials. One main request is that the health sector requires special consideration in the plastic street, not an exemption. In fact, many non-essential uses of plastics in the health sector can be eliminated, including non-medical applications, and essential uses of plastics can often be detoxified and designed for use. Health must be at the heart of the treat, not differently. While the health sector may require special consideration, a blanket exemption would stall movement away from single-use and toxic plastics, hinder innovation, and impede the adoption of safer and more sustainable alternatives. Important to add that healthcare contributes to the problem, but leads in the solution. The healthcare sector accounts for nearly 10% of the global economy, it's a major consumer of plastics, and generates significant plastic waste, contributing to environmental harm and climate impacts, primarily through production and incineration. Although a major consumer of plastics, the healthcare sector is playing a significant role in leading efforts to eliminate plastic pollution. Healthcare is uniquely positioned to lead global efforts and influence other sectors to combat plastic pollution. Many facilities are already taking action. In this regard, 63 health organizations and 65 other supporting organizations, over 120 in total, representing over 18 million health professionals worldwide and over 1,000 individual health professionals, all of them from 88 different countries, have endorsed an open letter with all the above elements. Finally, we urge that the INC responsibles, delegates, not to underestimate the voluntary and the binding nature of the treaty provisions, which should happen during the INC-5 negotiations. Otherwise, we may not have the effective treaty to end plastic pollution and protecting human health and the environment from the harm caused by plastics. Thank you very much.
Thank you to you. I thank you very much for your intervention. Now I would like to give the floor to Sustainable Environment Development Initiative. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to express our voice. I'm Chioma Lillian Ozaduche from Sustainable Environment Development Initiative, Nigeria. It's located in Benin City specifically. SEDI is calling for an instrument that addresses the issue of primary plastic polymers, considering the chemicals and the polymers of concern. Nigeria as a whole has significant concerns regarding primary plastic polymers in the plastic treaty. As Nigeria is a major importer of plastic, SEDI is also very much worried about the impact of plastic pollution and on its environment and ecosystems. Taking into concerns, some key concerns like environmental impacts, the economic burden, and health risk. On the issue of the environmental impact, plastic pollution leakage into the environment is a very major concern for Nigeria, given its limited capacity for waste management and disposal. Take, for instance, in Benin City, there is a waste dump site called Otofure Waste Dump Site in a community, Otofure community, that has a limited capacity for waste management. So even with community engagement, the increase in waste pickers, and even said this brand auditing and other projects on that particular community, there is still very much limited capacity to manage the waste. In Nigeria, over 32 million tons of waste is generated annually, with plastic accounting for 2.5 million tons. The flooding we experience in Benin City and its environment is fueled by plastic waste materials that have found their way into the drainage system and waterways, and this is repeatedly occurring every year, especially in the rainy season. We are also proposing that the economic burden and the health risk aspect will also be looked into, because it's affecting having impacts in our fishery and other industries, and has posed some significant health risks to the communities in Benin City. We're advocating for stringent regulations on the production and trade of primary plastic polymers, advocating for extended producer responsibility policies to hold manufacturers accountable for plastic waste management, and enhancing capacity for waste management. Thank you so much.
I thank you very much to Sustainable Environment Development Initiative. And now I would like to give the floor to CDP. Please, CDP, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for organizing this opportunity for us observers. Hello, everyone. My name is Shirley Chen, and I am the head of multilateral policy at CDP. CDP runs the world's environmental disclosure system for companies, cities, states, and regions. Last year, more than 23,000 companies with 86% of global market capitalization disclosed environmental data through our platform. Through the Scaling Plastics Disclosure Partnership, CDP is leveraging transparency and our global reach to help end the plastic pollution and waste crisis. It goes without saying that the challenge that lies ahead is significant. CDP commends yourself, Mr. Chair, your provision of a more streamlined starting point from which to achieve an ambitious text by the end of INC-5. However, we share the concerns of many member states and other observers that non-paper 3 fails to capture many elements critical to supporting ambition. Crucially, non-paper 3 does not include any mention of corporate disclosure. This is despite the text already contained in Part 2.13 and Part 4.3 of the compilation draft text. You cannot manage what you do not measure. And in the world of plastics, not much is measured. The data gaps that exist across every life cycle stage and every plastic product are vast. At CDP, we have witnessed how robust disclosure of corporate data supports financial institutions to identify gaps where capital should be deployed and catalyze or align their investment to support sustainable companies, helps businesses improve their environmental impacts while de-risking activities, and supports policymakers to track progress against global environmental agendas, as well as understand the efficacy of their environmental regulations. Harmonized corporate disclosure, supported by policy and in particular a robust mechanism under the ILB, is critical to delivering the volume of standardized data needed for transformative funding and transformative change. Thankfully, there is no need to reinvent the wheel. The role of corporate disclosure is already recognized across multiple cornerstone MEAs, such as the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Indeed, Target 15 of the Global Biodiversity Framework on corporate biodiversity disclosure sets a strong precedent which should be carried over into the ILB. Importantly, there is also strong market support. Climate disclosure today is considered business normal. Many of these companies have also already been disclosing plastics information for years through existing frameworks such as Ellen MacArthur's Global Commitment. However, voluntary action alone will always be inherently limited. A supportive regulatory environment is crucial to closing gaps and leveling the playing field. Robust corporate disclosure must be included in the text of the final ILB. Thank you.
I thank CDP. And now I would like to give the floor to Unitar. Please, Unitar, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, colleagues. I wish to start by thanking the INC Chair and the Secretariat for the opportunity to speak at this webinar. My name is Amrei Horsbrink-Gavillier, Senior Specialist, Green Development and Climate Change at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. UNITAR is pleased to be an observer throughout the plastics pollution INC process and beyond. The Institute is working towards a world in which individuals and institutions are equipped with the knowledge and skills and other capacities to overcome plastics pollution and associated leakages into the environment. At an international level, we recognize that the ongoing treaty discussions are demanding for countries, requiring recurrent training and support. UNITAR has been supporting the negotiation process through multilateral diplomacy training, including core areas such as communication skills, effective training, effective drafting, and leadership. At a national level, limiting the use of plastics and beating plastics pollution will require an informed and skilled civil service among other engaged national stakeholders. Systematic and recurrent nationally led capacity building programs will be fundamental to ensure effective treaty implementation, including skills in national assessment and planning, research and data management, as well as public outreach. Beyond targeted training, engagement with national education systems and the integration of plastic pollution issues into curricula will be key as treaty implementation strives towards long-term impact. In addition to capacity development, technical assistance to support national planning and implementation will be equally important, together with clear guidance on reporting on plastics flows. UNITAR has long-standing experience in this area, having supported the implementation of MEAs and national assessments in more than 90 countries, including national chemical profiles and Minamata initial assessments. One of the critical enablers for effective action on plastic pollution are trusted data sources. UNITAR is the lead author and initiator of global, regional, and national e-waste monitors and is contributing to statistical guidelines on measuring plastic flows. We are also working on creating global plastics data sets and are actively collaborating with multiple partners to address the issue of disaggregated data and hard-to-track national flows. I would also like to emphasize that we have recently submitted an INF document on the relevance of the globally harmonized system of classification and labeling of chemicals, also known as GHS, to plastics and associated chemicals, which can be found on the INC-5 website. We wish you all successful and constructive conversations towards the final text of the instrument.
I thank the intervention of from UNITAR, and now I would like to give the floor to Clean Climate and Environment Campaign Initiative. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Pablo, and everyone. I am Clifford Edebie, the Executive Director of Clean Climate and Environment Campaign Initiative, Lagos, Nigeria. Our organization is a non-profit dedicated to advancing sustainable development and environmental stewardship through our research and basic initiative. We strive to make a positive impact on the environment and society and while promoting sustainable development for all. Today's webinar aims to highlight the critical scientific issues that should guide effective policy making. While promoting the environment remains a top priority, it's essential to balance this with societal needs and economic reality to ensure solutions are both achievable and actionable. In this regard, our organization proposed that in the forthcoming INC-5, the preventing the production and use of new persistent organic pollutant known as POP, which pose a significant threat to human health and the environment. Therefore, we commit to the following. Number one, strengthen intergovernmental regulations and standards to prevent the development and commercialization of new POPs. Two, support the development of safe and sustainable alternatives to POP. Three, encourage the use of green chemistry and innovative technologies to reduce the reliance on human chemicals. Four, enhance transparency and disclosure requirements for chemical production and use. Number five, support research and development of new technologies and approaches to identify and address emerging POP issues. Number 6, foster international cooperation and coordination to address the global nature of POP pollution. Number 7, promote education, training, and awareness-raising activities to support the phase out of POPs. Number 8, ensure that new chemicals are assessed for their potential to become POPs before they are approved for use. And number 9, support the development of circular economy approach to reduce waste and prevent pollution. We are committed to preventing the production and use of POPs and ensuring a toxic-free for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I thank the intervention from a Clean Climate and Environment Campaign Initiative. And now, thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to UNDRR. Please, Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and hello to everyone from the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. My name is Martina Müller, and I'm looking forward to joining many of you at the 5th meeting of the INC in Busan next week. In light of the INC Chair's non-paper 3, UNDRR has 3 key recommendations to member states. First, we recommend the delegations consider incorporating the term disaster resilient when referencing waste management systems and infrastructure, particularly in provisions such as Article 8.2 and 17C. Disasters such as floods and hurricanes often disrupt waste management, leading to increased plastic leakage into the environment. By investing in resilient systems, we can mitigate these risks, ensuring the continuity of essential services, and align with global efforts to build resilient infrastructure, as highlighted in SDG 9 on resilient infrastructure. Second, we encourage the recognition of this convention's mutual support with international instruments beyond multilateral environmental agreements, an example being the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. This alignment is crucial for integrating disaster risk considerations into the implementation of the treaty. Using the term international instruments rather than agreements ensures inclusivity of non-binding yet central instruments that share important interconnections with the future convention. Third, it would be highly beneficial to retain the provision currently outlined in Article 9.4, which calls for the Conference of the Parties to adopt guidance on addressing existing plastic pollution. This will enable more in-depth guidance for implementing resilient and environmentally sound management systems, helping parties to, among others, design risk-informed infrastructure capable of enduring disasters. Finally, I want to share that UNDRR has prepared an official contribution to the process, which is available on the INC website. I will also post the link in the chat. This document includes information on A. Disaster risk reduction terminology to support standardization across intergovernmental processes. B. The impact of plastic pollution in increasing disaster risk, particularly flooding. C. The resilience of waste management systems to reduce plastic waste leakage from disasters. And D. Current efforts to minimize plastic pollution connected to disaster response. Please feel free to reach out to me bilaterally if you wish to discuss further. I will also leave my email in the chat. Many thanks, and we wish delegations very productive negotiations next week.
I thank the intervention of UNDRR, and now I give the floor to Women's Working Group on Ending Plastic Pollution.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. The Women's Working Group on Ending Plastic Pollution calls for a comprehensive and ambitious treaty to tackle the root causes of plastic pollution and protect both environment and human health. Our position stresses the urgent need to reduce the production and consumption of primary plastic polymers, as well as the harmful chemicals that continue to permeate plastics and recycled products. It is crucial we strengthen the human rights language in the treaty, particularly the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, as well as the right to science. For us, transparency and traceability should be applied comprehensively across the entire life cycle of plastic, not just to the end products. The health impacts of plastic are severe. Plastic and their toxic chemicals posing disproportionate risk to women's reproductive health, children, and groups in most vulnerable situations. Even research has shown that nano and microplastics are present in the placenta and even in newborn first vomit, highlighting that exposure begins before birth. Plastic also leaches thousands of harmful chemicals into food, air, soil, water, threatening our health on an unprecedented scale. Therefore, we call for clear measures in the treaty to limit plastic production, ban hazardous chemicals and microplastics, and promote design criteria that minimize harmful substances while encouraging reuse and repair. We also urge the establishment of a dedicated financial mechanism, particularly for Global South countries, to support implementation, capacity building, and a just transition to safe and green jobs. As we look the future, we hope INC-5 becomes a milestone for inclusive multilateralism, where treaties are not only tools for environmental governance, but also instruments for social justice. We urge you to prioritize health, transparency, and inclusivity in crafting a robust treaty that safeguards future generations from the harmful effects of plastic pollution. Thank you so much.
I thank you very much to Women's Working Group on Ending Plastic Pollution. And now I'd like to give the floor to Consumers International. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. First and foremost, thank you so much for the opportunity. Esteemed delegates, distinguished representatives, and fellow observers. We, Citizen, Consumer and Civic Action Group, a member and in this capacity delegate of Consumers International, which is an umbrella institution representing 200 consumer groups and organizations worldwide and across 100 countries, stand here to underscore the urgent need for a legally binding and ambitious treaty to address the escalating crisis of plastic pollution. It is imperative that we rethink the false narrative that plastics are simply a litter and a waste management problem and accept the reality that plastics are also a socio-economic issue. As you're all consumers yourself, you understand the shocking difficulty of avoiding plastics in our daily lives. This reality illustrates the urgent need for systemic change. Consumers are calling for a treaty that has commitments to phase out plastic production, protection from harmful chemicals, extended producer responsibility that holds producers accountable for the entire life cycle of their products, strong binding product design, redesign provisions, and a clear and transparent communication and labeling regarding the health risks associated with products and packaging. We assert that in letter and spirit, the treaty should ensure that the long-term impacts to the environment, human, animal, marine health, and human rights, including consumer protection, are prioritized over short-term commercial gain accrued by business as usual scenario. The treaty and the governing body need to ensure that in the name of ending plastic pollution, false solutions such as plastic offsetting or credits, incineration, energy recovery technologies, chemical recycle, and bio-based plastics are neither promoted nor permitted within the scope of the treaty. This requires the employment of binding language throughout the treaty and agreeing that the scope of this treaty encompasses the entire life cycle of plastic, starting with the extraction of fossil fuels to final disposal of plastic waste. The voice of consumers must resonate throughout these negotiations, as they are the key players in shaping the demand for sustainable solutions. Together, we can build a future where responsible consumption not only benefits individual health, but also foster a healthier, thriving planet for generations to come. With this, I thank you for your time and attention, and we hope we have successful discussions in Busan in 1 week's time. Thank you so much for the opportunity once again.
Thank you. I thank the intervention of Consumers International. And now I would like to give the floor to Across Atlantic Development. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time to enable us express ourselves. My name is Dr. David Apollos. I'm the CEO of Across Atlantic. Across Atlantic is based in London, and one of the things we focus more on environmental and research development, which we've seen, which is very crucial for our programs. And I would like to express the fact that as we prepare our team towards Busan and towards the path towards the year of monumental and multilateralism towards INC and INC-4 and 5, I strongly believe that there is so much role we can play as an international organization based in London to be able to provide the needed impact and, of course, design it towards the new treaty. I would like to walk you towards the fact that even though we have our activities based in Africa, especially in Nigeria, Ghana, and South Africa, based on the treaty coming up now, I would like to say to you this way: if you have take a step or walk on the street of Lagos, for example, or any African country, you will see liters of waste, liters of plastic on the street, even blocking our sewage and lakes and wakes. And I do believe that these are one of the reasons why we need to provide a binding solution that could be able to address the continual waste that's being affecting our environment. One of the things we face in our cross-Atlantic is focus more on, especially when it comes to environmental issues, it's more on biogas and, of course, environmental support. I strongly believe that as we continue to provide a pathway towards the issues that has to do with this treaty, I believe that the fossil fuel, staying away from fossil fuel is one of the mechanisms that we need to use to be able to fight the issue of plastic. In COP28 in Dubai, the year before last year, we were one of the team that provided a very strong intervention towards stepping back from fossil fuel. And of course, we believe that fossil fuel, is one of the instruments towards when it comes to plastic production. Currently in Africa and Nigeria, for example, the biggest factory that produces oil and gas, Dangote, is now in production. And when they produce fossil fuel, that of course produce plastic as well, and which of course mitigate the way we fight environmental pollution. So I strongly believe in a way towards Busan, the very part where we can be able to address the challenge today is to make sure we provide a single ban on single plastic, which has a serious impact on our health. Definitely, I strongly also believe collectively we can make an impact, but it all means the will of all the chair, all the observers, and Busan. Finally, to put a nail on it, is the fact that plastic has become a single catastrophic nature in our environment, which I believe we need to nail it so much we can. And the way towards that is towards making sure we have a treaty that is more inclusive, both government officials, corporate bodies, and of course the community. That's all I would like to put in place. But I'm looking forward to seeing Busan provide the leadership that we need towards that treaty. Thank you so much for that.
I thank the intervention of Across Atlantic Development. Thank you. And now I give the floor to the Descendants Project. Madam, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am Jo Banner, founder and director of the Descendants Project, an NGO based in Louisiana. In 2021, I rode at Hurricane Ida in Cantor Alley, enduring 180-mile winds and devastating conditions. Warmer waters allowed Ida to blow past its Cat 2 and fast-moving initial prediction. 7 hours later, the winds and rain finally died down. Those 7 hours were the most horrifying of my life. They would have stayed that way. However, 45 minutes later, the winds picked up again. We were in the storm center, not the end of it. For 7 additional hours, the winds roared and whipped with even more force. We faced 14 hours of relentless terror. As we head into INC-5, I urge negotiators to recognize we are in a hurricane of plastic. Communities like those in Cantor Alley are bearing the brunt of this crisis, suffering from disease and extreme weather, from plastic extraction and production. We were 1 hour away from critical infrastructure failure during Hurricane Ida, which includes the petrochemical plants lining our river. Residents already dealing with the highest cancer rates in the country, along with heart disease, asthma, and other ailments linked to plastic pollution, now also endure power and water outages, along with increased toxic air in the storm's aftermath. This disproportionately impacts Black descendant communities. We must not be lulled by the calm of false solutions like recycling, chemical recycling, or circular plastic. In a letter to Secretary Blinken, the Attorney General of New York California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Vermont wrote, the Plastics Treaty must place meaningful caps on the production and use of virgin plastic because the production of so-called recycled plastic can still use significant quantities of virgin materials. The full devastation of plastic from extraction to disposal is yet to unfold. The storm of plastic is already wreaking havoc on our lives. Plastic pollution is not a distant threat. It is a present-day emergency that has created environmental health and social crises. The aftermath of Hurricane Ida is a stark reminder that we are living in the eye of a storm. And for some, although already horrible, the real destruction is on the horizon. No one would choose to live in the eye of a storm if they could stop it. We cannot afford to wait for the storm's true fury to hit. I urge you to take immediate action to stop the plastic crisis and end the devastation that continues to occur in communities like Louisiana's Cancer Alley. Plastic extraction and production must stop. For our survival, you must end the storm of plastic and end the international human rights crisis facing communities like that in Louisiana's Cancer Alley. Thank you.
I thank the Descendants Project. And now I would like to give the floor to the International Solid Waste Association.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for accepting the International Solid Waste Association, ISWA, as a presenter at this event. My name is Mustafa Ahmed, and I'm the technical coordinator of the ISWA INC task force, and I'm honored to present our 5 key messages to tackle plastic pollution, including the marine environment. ISWA's mission is to promote and develop sustainable waste management globally and facilitate the transition to a circular economy. We serve as a global advocate and knowledge hub, supporting governments, NGOs, and the private sector in creating effective and sustainable waste management strategies. The urgency of our message cannot be overstated. Integrated sustainable waste management must become a global priority to tackle the growing crisis of plastic pollution. Our first message to the INC negotiators is to reduce plastic waste. Tackling plastic pollution requires addressing the entire plastic life cycle from design and production to consumption and end of life. This comprehensive approach helps reducing single-use plastics and those containing chemicals of concern, as guided by the waste management hierarchy and circular economy principles. Our second message is to ensure collection of all waste, especially plastics. Access to waste management services, particularly collection, is a basic human right, and extending waste collection to all should be a global priority to protect public health and prevent environmental pollution. Our third message is to upgrade illegal and open dump sites and to ban open burning of waste. Phasing out uncontrolled disposal and open burning could reduce the amount of plastic entering the oceans by 50% and nearly eliminate black carbon emissions and their associated health impacts. The introduction of safe final disposal means with pollution controls is crucial to minimize environmental impact. Our fourth message emphasizes the need to increase the role and accountability of extended producer responsibility schemes. EPR schemes must be effectively implemented in a more coordinated and comprehensive manner, with an enhanced focus and clear accountability for preventing the plastic leakage into the environment. Finally, in our fifth message, we call for providing waste management solutions applicable to socioeconomic and cultural conditions. Effective solutions must be context-specific, especially in the Global South. These solutions should consider regional technical capabilities, institutional frameworks, financial constraints, and cultural and social contexts. Interventions should build upon and enhance existing practices across formal and informal sectors. Thank you very much for listening to ISWA's key messages on waste solutions needed to tackle the plastic pollution problem. We are pleased to meet you all in Busan next week.
Thank you. I thank the intervention from ISWA, and now I give the floor to International Atomic Energy Agency. You have the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Marc Métian, and I would like to thank you, organizer, for planning this webinar to get a chance to share the following statement on behalf of my organization. The International Atomic Energy Agency welcomed the decision made at the UN and Environmental Assembly 5.2 to establish a committee to develop an international legally binding treaty to end plastic pollution, including in the marine environment. The IEA is encouraged that the UNEA resolution address all forms of plastic pollution at each stage of its life cycle. As a specialized agency of the UN, leading international effort for the peaceful use and development of nuclear technology, the IEA is coordinating global action to address plastic pollution through R&D and capacity building effort. Given the scientific consensus on the threat posed by plastic pollution, the IEA's flagship initiative, New Tech Plastic, supports IEA member states to address this challenge. Using a two-pronged approach, the IEA has two objectives. One, to offer innovative technology targeting the reduction of plastic waste volume, and two, to build global capacity to monitor and quantify marine microplastic using nuclear and nuclear-derived technique. IEA New Tech Plastic first objective, which is to reduce the overall amount of plastic released into the environment, is achieved through the development of a more efficient chemical recycling processes of hard to recycle plastic, saving energy and reducing GHG emission. To date, 39 member states are involved in this effort, with 9 in the process of establishing pilot-scale plan using radiation technology. NewTech's second objective is achieved by equipping laboratories and scientists with the technology and expertise they need to effectively analyze microplastic pollution, which is with the overarching goals of supporting member states to report on SDG 14, life below water. It's also aimed to establish a global New Tech plastic monitoring network, which is to be essential for the monitoring of marine plastic pollution and focus on building global capacity to use globally harmonized protocols to assess associated risk and to generate data to guide decision and underpin global policies supporting the sustainable management of global ocean. In addition, NewTech is working with the network to establish a global database on marine microplastic data to further support the measure laid out by this upcoming treaty. To date, 100 member states are involved in assessment and monitoring efforts, with a total of 404 participating laboratories. As part of its effort to continuously improve global capacity advanced technology, l'IEA launched a scientific mission in Antarctica earlier this year. The IEA, in collaboration with the government of Argentina, the IEA would like to take the opportunity to reiterate its commitment to contribute fighting plastic and negative impact on the marine environment, in collaboration with UNEP, other UN agencies, NGOs, and member states. The IEA will continue to support its member states, address this threat, and implement this upcoming treaty. The time to action is now. The IEA will be there as we work together to build a brighter tomorrow. Thank you.
I thank the International Atomic Energy Agency, and now I give the floor to the local and subnational governments coalition to end plastic pollution. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and the HINC Secretariat for holding this webinar. My name is Rachel Levesque. I work for the government of Quebec, and I'll be speaking today on behalf of the local and subnational government coalition to end plastic pollution. It is coordinated by ICLE, the government of Catalonia, UCLG, Global City Hubs, Regions 4, Quebec, and has more than 100 signatories up to date. The role and objective of the coalition are clear since the very beginning of the INC process. We express a strong commitment toward the adoption of an ambitious international instrument on plastic pollution that must include the critical role of local and subnational government as key actor if we want to ensure an ambitious implementation. Our levels, our subnational government, are at the forefront of combating plastic pollution, particularly when it comes to waste management and pollution prevention across all stages of the plastic life cycle. In most countries, we are the primary administration with competencies and budget on environmental and waste management. For these reasons, we firmly believe that local and subnational government must be recognized and well included in a clear way in the Plastic Pollution Treaty, which is unfortunately not yet the case this late in the process. Our recommendation aligns with our long-standing involvement in global environmental process, including active integration in the Paris Agreement and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as well as long-standing collaboration with the Secretariat of the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm, Minamata Convention. Members and stakeholders may not always grasp the importance of including local and subnational government in MEAs, but they have significant impact for all levels of government. It creates a sense of ownership and accountability, allowing us to do our part when it comes to implementation. And just to provide a concrete example, the active recognition of subnational government in the Kunming-Montreal GBF allows the government of Quebec to make the first ever subnational financial contribution to the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund earlier this month at COP16. Additionally, let's not forget that the involvement of non-state actors can help to ensure stability when it comes to implementation of MEAs. The competencies that many subnational governments have can become safeguard mechanisms that keep the right and high ambitions needed. This is why we need a strong recognition of the whole of government and whole of society approach as key pillar of the plastic pollution instrument. We have prepared an official position for the chair non-paper, which will be available on our coalition webpage, and we're ready to engage with negotiator and observer in that regard prior and during INC-5. Merci beaucoup. Thank you.
I thank you. Thank to the local and subnational governments coalition to end plastic pollution. And now I'd like to give the floor to the Innovation Alliance for a Global Plastics Treaty. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to share perspectives. I'm Svetlana Da Costa, the co-convener of the Innovation Alliance for Global Plastics Treaty, which was started by two innovators, Repurpose Global and the Ocean Cleanup. The IAGPT represents over 120 innovators tackling plastic waste across its entire life cycle, ranging from reuse and refill, alternative materials, waste management, legacy pollution cleanup, and waste worker organizations. As we deliberate on shaping an inclusive and effective instrument to combat plastic pollution, I'd like to highlight the $5.2 trillion financing gap required to scale solutions over the next 15 years. It is well understood that public and multilateral funding alone cannot meet this need, and there is a real risk that without sufficient and targeted financing, the aspirations of the treaty may not translate into tangible action on the ground. Innovators, local entrepreneurs, and grassroots waste prevention organizations, such as those in our alliance, are already driving change, often in very challenging environments. They bring forward creative, context-specific solutions that address plastic waste that are both impactful and inclusive. However, what they often lack is timely access to rapid, flexible, and scalable financing, the kind of support that allows them to move from a promising pilot to lasting impact. We believe that recognizing and enabling blended finance and innovative financial mechanisms with social and environmental safeguards within the future treaty could be game-changing. Instruments like outcomes-based financing, credit facilities, impact bonds, etc., have strong potential. Such innovative financing instruments also have precedence in other global frameworks, such as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which have specifically highlighted instruments such as payment for ecosystem services, biodiversity credits, green bonds, etc. These mechanisms align financial incentives with measurable outcomes, ensuring accountability, while unlocking much-needed capital from diverse sources, including the private sector, governments, and philanthropies. Our role as an innovation alliance is to build bridges between the innovation ecosystem and the policy-making process. And we've seen firsthand how these flexible financing mechanisms can amplify the work of innovators. And we hope the treaty can create a framework that reflects this potential. Rather than prescribing a one-size-fits-all financing mechanism, we encourage language in the future treaty that enables the use of diverse and inclusive financing approaches. This would not only unlock resources, but also ensure they flow to those driving real-world solutions in the most affected communities. Chair, we remain committed to supporting a treaty that is both ambitious and pragmatic, and we thank you for considering this perspective. I now hand the floor back to you. Thank you.
And I thank you. My thank to the Innovation Alliance for our Global Plastics Treaty. And now I would like to give the floor to Carrizo Comecrudo, Tribe of Texas. I would like to give the floor now to Carrizo Comecrudo, Tribe of Texas. Mr. Mancias? Yes. Thank you.
I am the tribal chairman for the Carrizo Comecrudo, and I bring a message from most of the non-governmental organizations representing our frontline communities across North America that have engaged in the negotiations as observers since the first meeting in Uruguay. Frontline refers to communities living near facilities across plastic life cycle, from extraction and refining oil and natural gas to incineration. The high construction of these facilities in our communities and resulting devastation of illnesses and mortality rates perpetuates illegal racial and economic-based discrimination in our countries. The treaty must address the needs of frontline communities affected by petrochemical extraction, plastic production, waste trade, incineration, open burning, and avoid creating additional harm by ensuring the safeguards of the human health and the environment. The approach necessitates respect for the human rights and indigenous people's rights, and a due recognition of the traditional knowledge and expertise of indigenous and tribal original peoples of the land affected, as well as local communities, waste pickers, and formal sector cyclers, lands resolving the crisis. The treaty should make mentions of environmental justice, environmental racism, and a right to healthy environment within the text. The treaty should recognize that hundreds of years of sustained colonial farm indigenous people caused by extraction, a linear economy, forced assimilation that has positioned indigenous people, their heritage lands, waterways, territories, resources, and sacred sites and treasures on the front line, disproportionately bearing the impacts of plastic pollution. The message to ambitious states is ambition is not a label posture. It is an actual position in the negotiations, and we'll be willing to fight for the measures we need to truly address the plastic crisis. Production reduction, as a civil society, we will not accept any treaty. We recognize that fit for the purpose and will meaningfully achieve that we came here to do in plastic solutions. I just want to add on that as a people that have been through an invasion for 500 years, net zero is a mathematical term that means nothing. That means there's no profit in zero, and trying to get a profit out of zero is really difficult for us to understand as a people. And I think we need to understand that it needs to stop, that the end of plastics has destroyed who we are. After all, we did have clean water, clean air, and clean land, plus there was no plastics 500 years ago when they came to these lands. Thank you very much, Chairman.
And I thank to Carrizo Comecrudo, Tribe of Texas. Now I give the floor to ASTM International.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all of the UNIA leadership and staff for this opportunity. Greetings to all. My name is Craig Updike, and I work with ASTM International, a globally active and relevant not-for-profit, mission and member-driven organization that supports development and use of science-based voluntary consensus technical standards, including guides, best practices, specifications, test methods, and important terms and definitions, and also provides training and laboratory services. In general, voluntary consensus technical standards that are developed in line with WTO principles establish a common shared language, promote trust and confidence, to find practical solutions and transform markets, and can be made mandatory by governments. Participation in ASTM International is open to all. Our 34,000 individual members in 150 countries collaborate across 147 technical committees that support 90 industry sectors. ASTM's relationships with 126 regional and national standards bodies, mostly in developing economies, promote awareness, access, cooperation, and collaboration. I invite you to visit our website, astm.org, or contact me for more information about ASTM International. ASTM's submissions for INC-2 and INC-4 remain available on the INC website as well. ASTM also works with other intergovernmental organizations, including the OECD and the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum, APEC. Over the past 18 months, ASTM delivered a self-funded project in APEC to raise awareness of the role that current and new technical standards can play and to facilitate identification of toolkits of science-based standards to support policy frameworks for managing plastics and mitigating and reducing plastics pollution in the greater Asia-Pacific region. Through several surveys and 2 workshops, over 20 speakers and over 150 participants from across the greater region shared information on their national challenges and initiatives, potential policy approaches, recommended standards, and identified needs for new standards. Participants identified several areas where voluntary consensus technical standards can play an integral role in reducing plastic waste, including material, stewardship, and circularity. Participants also identified lists of international standards that could support development and implementation of the UNEA LBI. The final project report was approved last month and is available to the public. I'll post the link in the chat shortly. In closing, members of ASTM's Committee D20 on Plastics are now developing new standards, and please contact me if you would like more information. ASTM is open to everyone and to contribute to this important work on international standards to support practical solutions and to help the world work better. Thank you very much.
I thank ASTM International. Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to PCX Solutions. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Stephanie Beitin. I'm the Managing Director of PCX Solution, which is a standard setter in the plastic crediting space. And we are also a PRO in the Philippines. There are already 9 billion tons of legacy plastic waste out in nature. And even if we get a very strong treaty in place, which we all hope for, and freeze current production today and manage to reduce production by 40% by 2050, we would still produce another 11 billion tons of additional plastic waste, which needs to be responsibly managed. Many people say that recycled content is too expensive, but the reality is that virgin plastic is simply too cheap because the externalities which cheap virgin plastic are causing are not priced in. Now, if you make companies take responsibility for their plastic footprint, for example, in the form of plastic credits, you basically add the cost of the credits to the virgin plastic price and thereby reduce the price gap to alternatives. Plastic credits, they can generate an immediate impact through waste diversion and social economic benefits, but they can also change the long-term unit economics of plastic, incentivizing investments in alternative solutions and recycling infrastructure. They offer a way to bridge the funding gap, especially in emerging markets that are hard hit by the plastic crisis with the biggest infrastructure needs. Therefore, we are sharing the case study of the Philippine EPR law, where plastic credits are one means of compliance. The Philippines has crafted a pragmatic EPR law with 6 upstream measures to reduce their footprint and 6 downstream measures to recover their footprint. And plastic crediting is one of many of these options. Now, nearly 1,000 companies have already registered an EPR program and collectively enabled the recovery and diversion of over 160,000 metric tons of post-consumer plastic waste in 2023. While not all obligated entities have complied in the first year, the majority of the largest plastic packaging producers did, and many actually went beyond the minimum 20% recovery target and already recovered more. We just published a detailed case study, and which I will share then in the chat. It is important to get the voices from emerging markets heard, as they often have to look at examples from the global north, which have very different reality and needs. Busan is actually not the end, it's the start to more collaboration and joint efforts, and therefore it is very important that the treaty text is ambitious and solid. Plastic credits are discussed as one of the financing mechanisms and to support EPR schemes, either before EPR is implemented as a transition or as an integral part of EPR, as in the Philippines. But for that, they need to follow very robust standards and requirements. Most importantly, they can provide funds to address plastic pollution today. I wish all successful negotiation and hope for a final ambitious treaty text. Over back to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
I thank you. Thank to the PCX Solutions. And now I would like to give the floor to the Center for Caulfield Justice.
Thank you, Secretariat and Honorable Chair. My name is Sarah Martik, and I am the Executive Director at the Center for Caulfield Justice. I'm grateful for the opportunity to deliver these comments on behalf of CCJ's over 4,000 members and supporters throughout southwestern Pennsylvania in the United States. I will be very frank. A treaty that leaves out global targets for phasing down plastic production is a failed treaty. No one should congratulate themselves for a treaty that fails to address the public health and environmental impacts of plastic production. In my area, children living within 1 mile of fracking wells where the feedstock of plastic is produced are at a 5 to 7 times greater risk of developing childhood cancer and experience 4 to 5 times the number of severe asthma exacerbations, events so serious that children need to go to the hospital or are prescribed a new inhaler. This is an unacceptable level of risk. People living near extraction and petrochemical facilities might not be able to see the pollution that is causing harm, but every flare, every shelter-in-place order, every notice of violation is an elevated reminder of the daily truth of living on the front lines. Plastic production puts our health at risk every single day. This treaty must be forward-thinking. Coming from a region that has been economically devastated by the decline of the coal industry, I know just how critical it is to get the just transition piece right. Investing in the leadership of impacted people, respecting Indigenous knowledge as the scientific foundation for basing our decisions, and recognizing that non-toxic reuse does not include circular plastics is the only way we will get to the just transition communities deserve, one that prioritizes not only workers, from petrochemical workers to waste pickers, but also the whole communities on the front lines of plastic production. We are in dire need of the political will to truly address the plastic pollution crisis. As we approach INC-5, I implore the chair to take charge of the moment and provide the guardrails needed to ensure this process produces a treaty that meets the moment we are in. I hope and trust that the chair will provide the space to ensure that production reduction and just transition are holistically addressed by the upcoming negotiations. And I hope and trust that the chair will, to the fullest extent their position allows, ensure that undue influence from the plastic industry does not derail or obstruct this process. Our communities deserve for our representatives at all levels of government to prioritize human health and the environment above all else. Thank you.
I thank CCJ, and now I'd like to give the floor to the International Science Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the International Science Council, federating over 250 scientific organizations, I warmly congratulate you, Ambassador, for your dedicated leadership in fostering constructive discussions among member states towards an international instrument on plastic pollution. This effort is a vital step in tackling a global complex threat to both human and ecosystem health while supporting climate resilient, sustainable development. The IEC would therefore like to highlight the following points to ensure a robust, scientifically grounded instrument. The instrument should comprehensively address the full plastic life cycle. Increasing evidence indicates that mid and downstream measures alone cannot offset the significant environmental and health burden of rising plastic production. Upstream supply-side measures to reduce primary plastic production are critical, and every effort should be made to include them in the instrument. A full life cycle approach not only mitigates its harmful impacts, but also helps reduce inequities across countries, easing the burden on vulnerable nations. The treaty requires a science-based approach to problematic plastic products and chemicals of concern. Existing evidence and scientific consensus can already inform the identification of products and chemicals of concern for elimination, while avoiding regrettable substitutions with harmful unregulated alternatives. Any criteria and lists in the instrument will require regular review, potentially supported by an expert body established by the Conference of the Parties. A robust monitoring framework is key for evidence-based decision-making, ensuring transparency and assessing treaty effectiveness. Progress should be measured through economic, environmental, and health indicators supported by national reporting, including on plastic production and recycling rates. The scientific community can contribute to enhancing existing data systems to track plastic pollution, assess health impacts, and inform effective implementation efforts. A strong science policy society interface is also key for effective implementation. It should integrate diverse knowledge sources, including indigenous and local knowledge, the latest scientific insights across the natural and social sciences, and account for the diverse implementation contexts to ensure practical and inclusive application. Lessons from existing science advisory models in the different MEAs can help design an effective fit-for-purpose mechanism. And the interim period before the first COP could focus on identifying the specific needs for scientific input and considering suitable models for engaging relevant expertise. The International Science Council is committed to continue leveraging the latest scientific evidence to provide science advice and policy options for a robust evidence-based treaty and implementation. I thank you very much.
I thank the International Science Council, and now I like to give the floor to the Alianza Latinoamericana de Asociaciones de la Industria de Alimentos y Bebidas. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Juliana Cortez, on behalf of the Latin American Alliance of Food and Beverage Industry Associations, we would like to express the following points. We agree that the objective of the instrument should be to end plastic pollution, including marine plastic pollution, in order to protect human health and the environment as outlined in Non-Paper 3. We believe this treaty must adopt a sectoral approach that clearly distinguishes the use of plastic in preserving the safety and security of food and beverages. We respectfully recommend that the section on alternative and substitute for plastics explicitly includes a reference to food safety. This inclusion will allow for a comprehensive evaluation of how alternative materials impact the entire food chain, from production to consumption, ensuring compatibility with health and environmental standards. Additionally, we support the development of principle on product design. In this regard, it's essential to recognize and build open existing global experiences in sustainable plastic packaging design. It's important that these experiences be considered to support the work of the advisory body responsible for implementing the treaty, especially regarding the exchange of experiences. Regarding waste management, we support the adoption of models must be tailored to the capacities and realities of each country at national and subnational levels. To ensure their success, these schemes must be well structured in terms of governance. Producers should be responsible for the collection and recovery. Governments play a crucial role in establishing and supervising the legal and regulatory mechanisms to facilitate compliance, and consumers follow proper disposition rules through a comprehensive education campaign. Through these measures, An effective EPR model would be built enabling active participation for all the stakeholders. To guarantee their goals, EPR models should function through a not-for-profit system. Furthermore, we consider it essential for each country to set national targets for these systems, aimed at increasing recycling rates and reducing waste generations. These goals should be ambitious but realistic, ensuring alignment with national capabilities and progress towards the treaty's overarching objectives. In conclusion, through a comprehensive approach from the producer's responsibility to the consumer's education, we can progress towards sustainable plastic management that includes the commitment and active participation of all sectors of society. Thank you very much to the Chair and Secretariat for this opportunity.
I thank the Alianza Latinoamericana de Asociaciones de la Industria de Alimentos y Bebidas. And now I would like to give the floor to the International Bottled Water Association.
Yes, thank you, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody. Again, thank you for the opportunity to provide these comments. I am Corey Martin with the International Bottled Water Association. We focus most of our efforts on issues that would impact U.S. companies. Multiple studies show that PET plastic bottles have a smaller impact on the environment than glass, aluminum, and carton packaging. This includes lower energy demand, solid waste, water consumption, potential climate change, smog, and acid rain. Imposing PET reduction requirements or prohibiting PET beverage containers would lead to much larger negative impacts to the environment in the future. The final treaty should recognize the growing science showing a greater negative environmental impact if other types of packaging are used and not force the industry to use alternatives. PET packaging, due to its relatively lightweight and proven food safety record, is used to provide safe and healthy potable water across the world. While the bottled water industry supports strong public water systems, they can be compromised in emergency situations or after natural disasters. In addition, there are still many parts of the world where bottled water is the only source of potable water. Bottled water has provided safe and healthy water to billions of people over the years. The bottled water industry has been leading the way in building a circular economy for many years now. All bottled water containers are 100% recyclable. Bottlers have lightweighted their containers, which has reduced the amount of plastic used to produce containers by billions of pounds over the last 2 decades. Bottles are designed for circularity, working to help ensure that their collection is possible in recycling streams across the world. Single-serve PET bottled water containers can be made from 100% recycled content, and bottlers have been making and achieving commitments to use post-consumer recycled content for many years. And contrary to media reports, recycling does work when everyone does their part. Access to post-consumer recycled content would not be possible without an effective recycling system. This being said, we know that more needs to be done. IBWA supports U.S. legislation to improve consumer access to recycling. The industry also supports well-designed deposit return systems at the U.S., state, and federal levels, and the inclusion of such policies in broader extended producer responsibility legislation. We believe that the final plastic waste treaty should provide flexibility for member states to achieve the established goals. A one-size-fits-all approach will not work across the world, as member states face many differences in infrastructure, access to safe water, and consumer preferences. Thank you again for the opportunity to provide these comments. The bottled water and PET industry will be attending INC-5 in Busan, and we look forward to working with everyone to finalize an effective treaty.
I thank you. I thank the International Bottled Water Association. And now I would like to give the floor to the Institute BV Rio. You have the floor.
Thank you, and good evening from the Netherlands. My name is Thierry Saunders, and BV Rio has been working with waste pickers for the last 12 years. Not only in Brazil, but also in Vietnam, in Indonesia, in Mozambique, in Kenya. And we have recently done a survey of 2,000 waste pickers of the 10,000 waste pickers using our app called Collect. And we wanted to know what their needs were and what they feel are important issues also for the UN Plastic Treaty. So I'd just like to highlight the importance of this, which is the largest workforce in the waste management sector in the world, the informal collectors and waste pickers. They are active in most countries of the world, including the US. So from Los Angeles to Rio, from Durban to Athens, and from Istanbul to Jakarta, they are a workforce that is estimated to be 19 to 25 million professionals. They are doing this on a day-to-day basis. They are responsible for about 60% of all recyclables collected globally today. In the global south, they are roughly 1 in every 300 citizens. And they are also the most efficient waste sorting workforce that we have. In fact, on a per dollar basis, they are far more efficient than many of the high-tech solutions that are currently being developed for sorting, because they can sort at source and deliver to the recycler, which many of these technologies cannot do. My organization represents thousands of these waste collectors, and they have asked me to ask governments at INC to acknowledge and prioritize the following. Waste pickers should be a priority and integral part of the UN Plastic Treaty and of EPR legislation. Basically, with no informal collectors, there is no recycling industry. Also, waste pickers should have VAT and tax charges waived, because they cannot offset those tax charges like normal companies can. Thirdly, waste pickers need to be guaranteed a fair share of EPR subsidies, because normal EPR subsidies are given to recyclers. And we, trained at universities, believe that trickle-down economics works. It does not. I can assure you, trickle-down economics doesn't work for the informal sector. Fourthly, many informal collectors do not wish to be formalized. They have many reasons for this. Please respect this and find ways to include the informal workers in new management legislation. Thank you very much. And please don't forget the largest workforce in the waste management sector.
I thank you. I thank the Institute BV Rio. And now I would like to give the floor to the Indigenous Peoples Caucus.
Thank you, Chair, delegates, colleagues, relatives. My name is Frankie Ronan with Society of Native Nations. Today, I'm here speaking on behalf of the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Plastics to address the urgent and disproportionate impact of plastic pollution on Indigenous peoples worldwide. We, the original stewards of this planet, are facing a crisis that threatens our lands, waters, and very existence. It is imperative that the Global Plastic Treaty not only recognize our rights, but also centers our voices and solutions in all its processes. For millennia, Indigenous people have lived as part of nature, developing non-toxic sustainable practices that are truly circular and regenerative, prioritizing the well-being of our ecosystems. Our ancestral wisdom offers invaluable solutions to the impacts of plastic pollution that causes at every stage of its life cycle, cutting plastic production and shifting to a non-toxic circular economy. We understand the interconnectedness of all living things and the devastating consequences of disrupting this delicate balance. Indigenous people bear the worst of the triple planetary crisis, and plastic production exacerbates each of them, from the extraction of fossil fuels to the dumping and the burning of plastics. It poisons our air, our lands, waterways, and people. The Global Plastic Treaty must recognize and actively promote the role of and contribution of Indigenous people and our knowledge systems in leading the efforts to address this challenge. Indigenous peoples have traditional knowledge and science that is based on a deep understanding of our territories passed down through the generations. We must have a culturally safe platform to participate in all processes as knowledge and rights holders, to collaborate among Indigenous representatives and with other stakeholders. This will lay the groundwork for an inclusive, just, and transparent process for us to work together to solve this global crisis. We need a systems transformation rooted in degrowth, eliminating reliance on toxic plastics and their harmful additives and chemicals of concern, while addressing the root cause of plastic pollution. from raw material extraction and polymer production to unsustainable consumption and disposal practices. Justice and reparations for impacted communities must be a center component of the treaty. Financial mechanisms must be just, equitable, accountable, and accessible to Indigenous and other frontline communities. In closing, the International Indigenous Peoples Forum on Plastics put forward the following bottom lines, which must be included in the Global Plastics Treaty and in all its implementation mechanisms. Honor and uphold the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People as a cross-cutting commitment throughout the Global Plastics Treaty, text and implementation. Center Indigenous peoples' rights, sovereignty, self-determination, health, experiences, including strong global and legal binding targets for phasing down plastic production, restricting harmful chemicals, protecting human life and human health and the rights, prioritizing ecosystems and climate, and ensuring justice and reparations for impacted communities. This is the time for action, and let's please work together to forge a treaty that respects the rights of Indigenous peoples, protects the planet, and ensures a sustainable future for all. And with that, I'm going to say we cannot recycle our way out of this. This is not, there is no such thing as plastic circularity, and plastic is fossil fuels, it is chemicals, and it is toxics. So please, let's look forward to an ambitious and meaningful INC-5 San. Thank you.
I thank you. I thank to the Indigenous Peoples Caucus. And now I would like to give the floor to our last speaker, which is the Environmental and Social Development Organization. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of ESDO, a participating organization of IPEN. ESDO welcomes the progress made on the Global Plastic Treaty and strongly urges negotiators to adopt a comprehensive approach that addresses the full life cycle of plastics. In line with UNIA Resolution 5/14, we emphasize the need for a treaty that not only aims to end plastic pollution, but also tackle its root causes, foster sustainable alternatives, and ensure that developing nations that the support needed for effective implementation. We recommended it explicitly referring UNIA Resolution, which advocates for life cycle approaches to plastic pollution. A dedicated principles article should be included to ensure legal force and to complement the mention of the Rio principles and human rights, providing a solid foundation for the treaty success. Also, regarding on that, the plastic products and chemical concern, Bangladesh supports phasing out problematic plastic and hazardous chemicals. So while promoting the local innovation and sustainable alternatives, the treaty should regulate toxic chemicals throughout the entire plastic life cycle with scientific evidence, guidance, the certain of an initial list, including substance like phthalates, bisphenol, and PFAS. Also, where the developing countries require technical and financial support for sustainable design innovation, we call for the binding language to encourage reuse, repair, and the local solution. And also, we support the lesson from the Montreal Protocol should be applied to systematically reduce plastic productions, supporting a transition to a post-plastic economy. Also, the finance regarding on that, the treaty should include a dedicated financial mechanism prioritizing state capacity, waste management, and a just transition. And funding should be evidence-based, supporting scientific studies and innovative solution. And also, a binding approach is needed to protect the livelihoods of vulnerable communities, particularly waste pickers, and policies should promote workforces development, occupational safety, and integration into a safe plastics value chain and funded by EPR revenue. And, we also call for the treaty to prioritize education and research, particularly in developing countries, building strong knowledge systems and focusing on evidence-based approaches to sustainable development will empower nations to take meaningful actions. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank you. I thank the Environmental and Social Development Organization. As I mentioned, you were the last speaker in my list. And I want to thank you all. Thank you very much for these very rich and insightful interventions. As we come to the end of our webinar, I want to thank you all those who attend this webinar today. I hope that you found the interventions helpful as you prepare for INC-5. But allow me, because I would like to underline my also appreciation to all of you for your participation in this webinar and for your engagement in the process. This landmark treaty will be an alive tool to guarantee that governments, scientists, civil society, NGOs, industry, and individual citizens continue protecting human health and the environment from plastic pollution. We need to continue working with the scientific community, not only to support robust research to inform future decision-making, but also to come up with innovative solutions. We have worked tirelessly to achieve the world's first legally binding instrument on plastic pollution because we understand what's at stake. Success at INC-5 will mean ensuring economic development in harmony with health, safety, and sustainability. This is our moment to make a meaningful difference. Together, we must ensure that the decisions and actions taken at INC-5 truly reflect the interests of the planet and all of its inhabitants. By embracing dialogue, cooperation, and bold actions, we can pave the way for a healthier future for everyone. I trust that we can reach a strong and unified agreement at INC-5. So we will take an essential step toward protecting our planet and preventing an ecological tipping point. The science is clear. Plastic pollution possesses a rapidly growing threat to people and nature. That's why governments have come together to negotiate a legally binding instrument to end this global challenge urgently. Let's do our part to make this a reality. Once again, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you all next week in Busan. And with this webinar is now closed. Thank you very much for your participation and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Mr.
everyone.
Chair.
Bye-bye. See you.
Thank
you. Gracias. Chao. Muchas gracias.
Bye.